In our last episode, we watched as Socrates methodically dismantled the idea that justice means helping friends and harming enemies. But just when it seemed the conversation was wrapping up, something explosive happened. Enter Thrasymachus, a skilled teacher of rhetoric who's been simmering with frustration throughout the entire discussion. Today, we'll witness one of philosophy's most dramatic confrontations as Thrasymachus bursts into the dialogue with a shocking claim about justice that still challenges us today. Get ready for a philosophical showdown that feels more like an intellectual cage match. The Republic by Plato, Book 1, Part 4. Now I understand you, I said. Whether you're right or not, I'll try to figure it out. But let me point out that in defining justice, you've used the word interest, which you earlier forbade me to use. It's true, though, that in your definition you've added the word of the stronger. A small addition you must allow, replied Thrasymachus. Whether it's big or small addition doesn't matter right now. First, we need to determine if what you're saying is true. We both agree that justice is some kind of interest, but you go on to say it's of the stronger. I'm not sure about this addition, so we need to examine it further. Go ahead, he said. I will, but first tell me this. Do you believe it's just for subjects to obey the rulers? I do, he answered. But are the rulers of states absolutely infallible? Or can they sometimes make mistakes? I asked. Of course they can make mistakes, he replied. So, when they're making laws, sometimes they might get it right and sometimes they might not? True, he said. When they get it right, they make laws that serve their interest. When they're mistaken, they make laws contrary to their interest. Do you agree? Yes, he said. And their subjects must obey these laws. And that's what you're calling justice? Undoubtedly, he said. Then according to your argument, justice isn't just obedience to the interest of the stronger, but sometimes the opposite as well? What are you talking about, he asked. I'm just repeating what you've said, I replied. But let's consider this. Haven't we agreed that the rulers can be mistaken about their own interest in what they command, and also that obeying them is justice? Isn't that what we established? Yes, he admitted. So then, you must also admit that justice isn't actually serving the interests of the stronger, especially when rulers accidentally give orders that end up harming themselves. Because if, as you claim, justice means subjects following their rulers' orders, then aren't we forced to conclude something interesting here, wise friend? Aren't the weaker people being ordered to do things that actually harm rather than help those in power? That's absolutely clear, Socrates, Polemarch said. Yes, Clearofon stepped in, but only if we take a word for what he meant. We don't need anyone to explain his words, Polemarch responded. Thrasymachus himself admitted that rulers sometimes give orders that go against their own interest, and that it's considered justice when subjects follow these orders. Polemarch, Thrasymachus stepped in. What I said was that justice is when subjects do what the rulers command. I said, yes, Clearofon, but Thrasymachus also claimed that justice is the interest of the stronger. While accepting both these ideas, he further admitted that the stronger might order the weaker subjects to do things that don't actually serve the stronger's interest. This implies that justice could just as easily harm the stronger as benefit them. But, Clearofon interrupted, he meant that justice is what the stronger believe to be in their interests. This is what the weaker must do, and this is what Thrasymachus defined as justice. Those weren't his exact words, Polemarch objected. It doesn't matter, I replied. If that's what he's saying now, let's work with that. Thrasymachus, let me ask you, did you mean that justice is what the stronger think is in their interest, whether it actually is or not? Certainly not, he said. Do you think I'd call someone stronger when they are making a mistake? I thought you did, I replied, when you admitted that rulers aren't infallible and can sometimes be mistaken. You're twisting my words, Socrates, Thrasymachus responded. Let me ask you this. If a doctor makes a mistake about a patient's illness, does that make them a doctor because of that mistake? Or if someone makes an error in math or grammar, does that error make them a mathematician or a grammarian at that moment? Sure, we might say the doctor made a mistake, or the mathematician made an error, but that's just a figure of speech. The reality is that neither the grammarian nor any other skilled person ever makes a mistake as far as their expertise is concerned. They only blunder when their skill fails them, and at that point they are no longer acting as skilled professionals. No expert, whether they're an artist, a wise person, or a leader, makes mistakes when they're truly acting in their professional capacity. Yes, we commonly say they make errors, and I went along with this casual way of speaking, but since you're so passionate about precision, let's be absolutely clear. A ruler, when actually functions as a ruler, doesn't make mistakes. And because they don't make mistakes, they always order what serves their own interests. The subject's role is to carry out these orders. So, as I said initially, and will say again, justice is whatever benefits the stronger. Really, Thrasymachus, do I actually seem to be twisting your words? Absolutely, he replied. And do you think I'm asking these questions to undermine your argument? Think isn't the right word, he shot back. I know you are. But you won't succeed. You'll never win through sheer force of argument. Let me clarify something, my friend, to prevent any confusion between us going forward. I need to ask. When you talk about a ruler or someone in power whose interests should be served by the subordinate's obedience, as you claim, are you talking about a ruler in the casual, everyday sense, or in the precise, technical sense? In the absolutely strictest sense, he said. And now go ahead, try to find a flaw in my argument if you can. I'm not asking for any mercy from you, but you will never succeed, never. Thrasymachus, I said, do you really think I'm crazy enough to try to trick you? I might as well try to shave a lion. Well, he said, you just tried a moment ago, and you failed. Enough of these pleasantries, I said. Let me ask you a question. Is a doctor, in the precise sense you're using, someone who heals the sick or someone who makes money? Remember, we're talking about a true doctor here. A healer of the sick, he replied. And what about a ship's captain? I mean, a true captain. Is he a captain of sailors or just another sailor? A captain of sailors, he responded. The fact that he sails on the ship isn't relevant, right? We wouldn't call him a sailor. His title of captains has nothing to do with sailing itself, but rather signifies his expertise and his authority over the sailors. That's correct, he agreed. Now, doesn't every profession have its own particular interest or goal? Certainly, he said. And that's what the profession is meant to consider and provide for, right? Yes, that's the aim of any profession, he said. And isn't the true interest of any profession its own perfection, nothing more, nothing less? What do you mean by that, he asked. Let me explain by using the body as an example. If you were to ask me whether the body is self-sufficient or has needs, I'd say it definitely has needs. The body can get sick and need treatment, right? So it has interests that the medical profession serves. This is why medicine exists and what it's intended for. Wouldn't you agree? Absolutely, he replied. But let me ask you this. Is the medical profession, or any profession for the matter, flawed or lacking in the same way that an eye might lack proper vision or an ear might fail to hear well? Does a profession itself need another profession to look after its interests, just as the eyes and ears might need medical care? Does each profession require another profession to support it, and that one yet another endlessly? Or do professions only need to look after their own interests? Or perhaps they don't need to look after themselves or be looked after by others at all? If professions have no flaws or defects, they wouldn't need to correct themselves, either through their own practices or through another profession. They'd only need to focus on the interests of what they're meant to serve. After all, every profession remains pure and flawless as long as it stays true to itself. That is, as long as it's perfect and unchanged. Consider my words in the precise way you prefer, and tell me if I'm not right. Yes, that's clearly correct, he replied. So medicine doesn't consider its own interests, but rather the interests of the body, right? That's true, he agreed. And horsemanship doesn't consider its own interests, but the interests of horses. In fact, no profession is concerned with its own interests, because it doesn't have any needs. Each profession only cares for the subject it serves, correct? That's right, he said. But Thrasymachus, I said, aren't the professions superior to and in charge of their subjects? He reluctantly agreed to this. Then I said, no field of expertise or profession considers or demands what's in the interest of the strong or superior, but only what's in the interest of the subject, the weaker party. He tried to argue against this point too, but eventually gave in. Then I continue. No doctor, insofar as they're truly acting as a doctor, consider their own benefit when prescribing treatment, but rather the benefit of their patient. After all, we've agreed that a true doctor is a kind ruler, with the human body as the subject, not just someone out to make money, isn't that right? Yes, he agreed. And similarly, a ship's captain, in the strictest sense of term, is a ruler of sailors, not just another sailor. We agree to that, he said. And such a captain as a ruler will make decisions and give orders for the benefit of the sailors under his command, not for his own benefit or that of some other ruler. He reluctantly said yes. Then Thrasymachus, I concluded, there's no one in any position of authority who, when truly acting as a ruler, considers or demands what's in their own interests. Instead, they always act in the interest of the subjects, in line with the requirements of the profession. Tell me, Socrates, do you still have a nanny? Why are you asking me that? I replied. Shouldn't you be answering my question instead? Because she's clearly neglecting her job, he answered. She lets you drool all over yourself and doesn't even wipe your nose. She hasn't even taught you the difference between a shepherd and his sheep. What do you mean by that? I asked. What a remarkable moment this is, and it reveals something so fundamentally human. Haven't we all been in debates where someone's convinced they have the absolute truth, where they are not really listening, but just waiting for the chance to prove everyone else is wrong? That's exactly what we are seeing with Thrasymachus here. His dramatic entrance and bold claim that justice is nothing more than what serves the interests of the stronger isn't just about shocking the room, it's challenging the entire way we think about justice and power. Notice how Thrasymachus doesn't just disagree with Socrates, he's disgusted by what he sees as intellectual weakness. His claim that justice is nothing more than what serves the interests of the stronger isn't just a definition. It's a challenge to the very idea that we can talk about justice as anything other than power relations. And what makes this dialogue so relevant today is how it mirrors contemporary debates about power and justice. When we look at laws and policies in our own time, don't we often find ourselves asking whose interests they really serve? Thrasymachus' view might seem cynical, but it forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the relationships between power and justice in our own society. And what stands out to me is Socrates' response, not with immediate reaction, but with careful questioning. He wants to understand exactly what Thrasymachus means, even when faced with hostility. And I believe there's a valuable lesson here about how to engage with challenging viewpoints. If you're finding these philosophical battles as fascinating as I do, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Next week, we'll see how Socrates responds to Thrasymachus' provocative claim about justice and power. Join the discussions below. Do you think Thrasymachus might have a point?